All right. Welcome, everyone. I'd like to call this final Committee of the Whole meeting for this term to order. Ask for any declarations of conflict. Seeing none. Go ahead.
I just want us to all prepare ourselves for the meeting in honor of Director of Planning, Andrew Allen, who's attended tonight. Thank you. Thank you. October 21st, or October 1st, 2021. Best email ever. Thank you.
You're welcome. Pleasure.
All right, with that, could I get a motion to adopt the agenda? Moved, seconded, all in favor? No appointments or delegations, no new business. Moving on to business items 5.1, the 2022 third quarter department reporting progress reports. Ask for a motion to accept the reports. Moved, seconded, all in favor? All right. All right, so first one up, Mr. Yates.
Thank you, Chair Scott. No specific presentations on the reports, but all of the staff are assembled if council has any questions.
Any questions on the reports? On the admin side? Councillor McLean.
Yeah, I wanted to use a bit of this meeting for to more just allow council to speak to some of the priorities that we had and help with transition a bit. So throughout this, I'm just going to pick some of the key initiatives that we've been working through, and I'd love for just mostly council to share some of their thoughts and use this. Hopefully some of the new councillors are watching and we can kind of help transition that between us. So to that end, I want to speak to something on page 7 that we've been working to for a while. It's taken a lot of effort. OnBase is being implemented very soon. So I'm just wondering from the council table what this means to us and why it was important to put all this effort into digitizing some of our records, and if anyone has any strong thoughts on that.
So one of the things that we've actually made a priority this term is to move the council records to be all digital. It allows for flexibility. It reduces the amount of paper that we use in the operations, but it's also going to be, going forward, an opportunity to make more of the business of the district available to the community. So, as we digitize these documents and we redo our website, which is in process, more and more and more of the information will be transparent to the community. It makes it just much more open to what we're doing, how we're doing it. If they want to find information, they don't have to come to us. They don't have to go to staff. They can actually search it out on the website. So it makes a huge difference. It also allows, particularly during COVID, we found that the finance department had pretty much moved to digital. So when staff had to work from home or their children were sick or whatever, the business kept moving forward because they didn't have to be here to move that forward. They could actually do it online. So it's reduced the cost, and I think made us more open to doing that in other areas. We're also now seeing it with implementation and planning with the cloud permit, and we're implementing more online payments. So it's making our processes more suitable for the community. So that's huge. I think that's all I have to say.
Anybody else? Okay, well, go ahead, Mayor Seegers.
The zoning bylaw. we've been working on that for, 10 years? And I think we made it a priority, and staff took us up on that. And we're going to see more alignment then between our zoning bylaw and our official community plan. What we kept hearing from developers and from staff was, which one do we follow? So it caused more time and more inconvenience for both parties because there wasn't that alignment. So we're going to see that will start having dividends going forward as well. So thanks to staff for putting that one forward. Thanks.
Councillor McLean?
Yeah, another key one I just want to point out is that on page 8, there's a mention of a consulting agreement with Ecologic Consultants for archaeological services. So this one gets a little more technical. So I'm just wondering to the staff side what this change may impact, particularly with our district-wide site permit for archaeological.
Thank you for the question through the chair. So we're finding issues right now with, we've had issues with capacity from the local archaeological firm. They're quite busy. They're handling, in situ's handling most of the files on the coast. So this is an effort to provide us with more options so we don't run into roadblocks on certain projects when we encounter archaeology. So it's intended to create more flexibility for the district. We had some instances, for example, on Wharf last year where we had to pause the project because of capacity available from local archaeological consultants. So we're doing one with Ecologic and another one with Wood Archaeology, and we'll have some ongoing files still with in situ. So this just creates more options for us. Thanks.
Thank you. Mayor Segers.
I want to acknowledge staff for how they dealt with communications in this term. When we came in, there wasn't really a plan for how to deal with all the communication we were getting from the community, all the emails and all the questions about everything under the sun. And staff took that on, and it's seamless. Like, it comes in, communications just get dealt with. We know that we trust that staff have it handled, and that's the response we get from the community. They just know that they're getting a response, and I think that's unique in local government. So I want to acknowledge those who've taken that on. Thanks.
Okay, no further hands, so we can move on to Finance 19. Anybody want to start on that one? Mayor Segers.
It was the beginning of 2019. When did COVID hit? 2019, right? 2020. Okay, 2020. So January of 2020, we rolled out Office 365. Staff got trained up. We had Teams in place. We had the Outlook in place. And then COVID hit. And we were in a perfect place to be able to use that technology to be able to communicate among the staff and among council. If we wouldn't have had that, I don't think it would have been as smooth a transition. So very timely and much support. I mean, in 2 days, you guys had us turned around from being live to being like in person to being working from home. So kudos to finance and IT. Yeah, and Dave would like to speak.
Go ahead, sir.
I just wanted to highlight a couple of things that are in my report. One is we have 3 bullets just based on procurement, and procurement was something that council bought into in 2022. We have a procurement person now, and the person's very busy. We put through more procurements this year than any other year. And having that person coordinate that and be, that person's working with 5 or 6 different people purchasing all the time, I think has really made an efficiency with the district. The other item here I want to talk about was our website. Although the main website isn't fully up and running, it's moving along in the background. One of the items we did purchase was something called Bids and Tenders, and that allows us, it's kind of similar to Cloud Permit, but in the backwards way, meaning anybody who wants to bid on something with the district, they submit through Bids and Tenders, and it's all electronic. It's a web product, and that was part of the money that was for the website design. It will be a link on our new website when we get that to that spot, but we're finding it very successful. It gives us a depository for all our bids to stay forward in one spot. It tells us who's interested in bidding with us. It tells us who logs in to potentially submit. So it gives us a really good database of information. And the last item I want to speak to was the tax sale. We had a tax sale this year. First time in 10 or 12 years. And we had one property go through the tax sale. We had one staff that wasn't happy about that because that person takes a lot of pride in ensuring there isn't a tax sale. And so it was kind of funny because the tax sale was on the Monday, and on the Friday, that person made contact with us. So it was a spread of 4 days, really, that, we were that close to not having to have a tax sale by 4 days. So, but good work on the staff for keeping it to a minimum or nothing, each year for the tax sale. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor McLean.
Yeah, I just want to pick up on a point that Director Douglas made in some of our changes to procurement. And I think a trend throughout this term that I've noticed is the professionalization of a lot of the work that we do. This council hired a good number of staff. We did expand this staff ranks, but I think it brings that level of high quality service to the district. So the procurement is a great example of that. We are driving value by having somebody focused on that. Another example is the deputy corporate officer. We are adding capacity so the corporate officer isn't fighting fires all the time. We actually have a little bit of space within the corporate services department to tackle some of the bigger challenges we have. So I don't know if any other councillors want to speak to some of the staff increases and some of the change that has resulted from that throughout the term.
Well, I agree with you. It has increased professionalism. It's always tough. It's a tough decision. It's always a tough sell to the public as to increasing the staff and making it justified and stuff like that. But I think Lindsay and the rest of the team does a great job in making sure that we understand fully why we need this and why it needs to pass. And you guys did a great job on that, and we saw it and bought in. So I think it's all really good. One question for Director Douglas on the procurement. With the procurement officer, will that allow us to start sourcing supplies outside of having a vendor? So, for example, the light install at the airport, would we go out and purchase those lights and just have to tender the install of them so that there's no upcharge on that product, or is that a direction further down the road?
Yeah, I would say that direction is probably further down the road. What the coordinator does is he works with the project manager to push out an RFP or RFQ in a more standardized way and a more efficient way, so that the project managers just have to come to one person once they've got their scope all ready, right? And so then from there is usually posted a BC bid, and then all the bids are accumulated in this new software and then passed on back to the project manager.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Thank you. Councillor Rowe.
Just one more thing on staffing. I think to me, it's just over the 4 years feels like we're more solid now, if you will, more stable, more predictable in that more positions are filled. The positions that we've added, we've been able to recruit to, which is great. I just want to also acknowledge, though, we spent much of this term with an EOC running between COVID, water, weather, and I think, well, that has to be unusual, the amount of days we've spent in EOC. And I think the community needs to realize that's not just SCRD staff, but that staff that reaches across all of the governments. And, you know, that's a massive amount of work to also take on. So I want to acknowledge the work that's done there. I'm very proud of what's happened in this building from a human resources standpoint and the way we've been able to increase capacity and improve service for the community. And yeah, well done, everybody.
Councillor Toth.
Better get in on this while I can. Thank you. I actually have legitimate questions about the report when we get a little further in. But regarding the staff capacity, I ran into one of our finance staff the other day in Wilson Creek, and she just commented that she had come from EOC training. So expanding the ability for our staff to do multiple things across the whole region is huge. And I know that, you know, Team Sunshine Coast has been a big part of the things that we've been pushing for this term with all the other governments and the school board. I'm hopeful that will continue. I'm hoping that we made enough inroads with that even if somebody wanted to undo it at this point, they couldn't. So we'll see how that goes going forward, but yeah.
Let's hope not. All righty. Moving on to section 3, planning and development. Mr. Allen, would you like to speak to it, or?
Well, by coincidence, I just accidentally closed my agenda when I was trying to move it over to the other screen. So off the cuff, I think that we're proud to present a variety of projects, applications, and the progress in this Q3 report. Q3 report was successful in seeing through the short-term rental regulations. I think we all knew that was going to be challenging to try and strike a balance, to try and support neighborhood fit as the primary objective, but also to recognize the economic impact and benefits that tourism has in the Sunshine Coast. So attempting to strike a balance on that, and look forward to bringing further clarity on our regulatory scheme to the next council. Zoning bylaw complete and adopted, and that was exciting and gratifying for us as a staff and for council as well, so we thank you. And as been highlighted on quarterly reports throughout all of 2022 and in previous years, the successes and advancements we're having with the downtown rental projects, and I think that's been clear in our quarterly report. What that means to staff and the excitement that we feel on that. Ebb-Tide Rental, TELUS Rentals are both in for building permit. Community Services is moving along in terms of fundraising and financing. Green Court is moving along in terms of financing as well, and that's an excitement. And we've been talking both internally and as well with external contacts to have in the community. A lot of these things seem to take 1 to 2 years of dreaming and talking about them, 1 2 years to process, and another 1 to 2 years for construction. So we budget and we plan on annual cycles, but these things go through the projects and through the phases, and at some point in our futures, we'll see multiple large, higher density buildings in our downtown core that are dedicated for rental. And that's very exciting. And we look forward to continuing on with that. And we have future plans to look at the OCP, look at our parking rates, look at design downtown, look at servicing and coordinating with SCRD. And we've made great advancements in our regional coordination with SCRD and Gibson's, and we communicate on a regular basis. And that's also reflective of some of the items you'll see in the quarterly report respecting regional growth, scoping, climate change initiatives, transportation, transit planning, and so forth. And so staff are pleased to present the Q3 report. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Tom.
Thank you. An actual question and then a couple comments. Looking at pages 26 and 28, for example, the couple of graphs that are there, we are seeing a reduction in applications compared to last year. I remember, last year you commenting that it was, flat out for the whole department. Are we sort of settling down to a more normal level at this point, or is this just a blip? Things are coming in Q4, or, yeah, thank you.
Can I say yes to everything? Undoubtedly, there are a few applications coming. There's a few that are cooking, if you will. We have some that are pending submission of engineering drawings and reports. Some we shepherd through to development permit approval and find that they then suddenly hit the open market, and a product has been established through approvals and not always constructed immediately. So there's the whole bevy of things, and last year was exceptional in terms of numbers and staffing and so forth. I think the quarterly report also reflects a number of subdivisions, land subdivisions that don't get the profile that buildings and some of the rezonings do. And that's an area we continue to see, and we've issued a preliminary layout review for a subdivision as recently as yesterday, and we're seeing others come towards conclusion. And that doesn't, as I say, get the same profile, and perhaps our service level standards might be reduced in that area as the higher profile applications come through. But in terms of housing developments across the board, there's a number of options, and we're also hopeful and excited to see an uptick on secondary dwellings on parcels now that more zones within zoning bylaw 580 provide some flexibility.
Thank you for that. I know that, 4 years ago, we all talked about all the more housing we needed in all of its forms. And, to look around, you don't see a lot that has sort of impacted the way we want to at what's been constructed. But, like you said, these are multi-year projects to get out the gate, and it'll be interesting. It'll be fascinating to see where we are in another 2 or 3 years. I think the housing needs report is going to feed a lot of that movement over the next few years. Talking to a local business owner here just a couple of days ago, they've been kicked out of the building that they're in, but it's sort of a mixed blessing because the person that purchased the building wants to redevelop it. So they are looking to do something new and something bigger in our downtown, which is exactly where we beg for more density. So thank you.
Mayor Seniors.
Thank you. On page 27, number 3 talks about we continue to pursue options for gray water use. And I know that our building official brought this forward, is moving it forward through the province. I'm just wondering if we have an update. Have we got any feedback about where that's at?
Yes, thank you. And I know that is something that has been on our work plan. We did submit an official application for a local area variance for BC Building Code. It is something that could take some time. We expect if we get preliminary feedback in the positive, then it's okay, come back to council, go to SCRD, go to Town of Gibson's, see what the costing might be like, see if there's room for collaboration, and then reaching out to stakeholders. We know we have a good list of builders. We know there are certain builders that might be interested. So taking steps in the right direction, yes. Cautiously optimistic at best at this point.
Yeah, just to follow up, I think the community thinks this is something that's easy to do and easy to implement, that everybody should be doing it. Well, I think what we've learned is it doesn't exist in BC. it's not actually part of the legislation yet, and we're actually looking at leading that conversation to move something like that forward.
Yes, that's correct. At this point, we are very much open to inquiries or options where people may wish to pursue this voluntarily, and we'll be supporting it in any way we can. In terms of making it a mandatory requirement within the BC Building Code, we're blazing new trail here, and it's early yet. It's a possibility, but I think we need to recognize the increase in water supply also has to come with the decrease in demand. I think everyone at the table knows that, of course, but we're trying to find ways in which we can leverage that.
Councillor McLean.
So this one on page 20 actually comes from a conversation I had with Councillor-elect Shepherd. There's a note here about commencing background review for a downtown area plan. I think this is going to be one of the very early challenges that the new council will have, is how broad would they like to tackle the OCP? Is it narrow in the downtown, or is it broader in a whole OCP rewrite? So I'm wondering if the people at the council table might have some thoughts that we could share based on our experience with the zoning bylaw, our biggest piece of policy change, and what we learned from there that might be useful as the incoming council looks to do a very large policy change as well. So I'm wondering if anyone has any thoughts off the top of their head.
Yeah, well, I mean, I don't have to, I don't have to run for election again, so I can actually speak my mind on this one. But basically, the new council is hugely challenged as far as I'm concerned. The LCP, we need to look at all areas and look as to where we can manage density, add density for what makes sense. And well, we've all seen the millions of emails we get when a developer wants to change zoning and move to higher density in certain areas, and I don't think we ever saw one community welcome it when it came to higher density. So we all stand on our soapbox and say that we need affordable housing and higher density until it's in our backyard, and then it's no. And I mean, even the downtown core is no different. The high rises at the Telus, the Wade, even Ebtide, the backlash that we would get, even in those developments, there wasn't one community that actually said yes. So it's a challenge, and it's going to be a challenge for the next council and those that are staying on to move forward for what is actually good for Sechelt and not be swayed by the people that come out and say no. And it's a challenge picking those sides. And unfortunately, what comes out of it, and you see it time and time again, when we do decide against what some in the community say, they say they haven't been heard, which isn't true. We have to make those decisions for the greater of the community. So I look forward to watching the next council and seeing how they manage that. Good luck.
Thanks for that, Councillor Scott. As it happens at this point, I don't have to run for re-election anymore either. So, you know, in listening to your comments, I thought it really funny that, you know, only in Sechelt could 4 stories be considered a high-rise. But you're right. There are so many projects that the community wants to see built in a different neighborhood than their own. And I don't think that's unique to us by any means. You know, you look at all the things that go on in other communities all over the province. One thing with this downtown area plan moving forward is, you know, an OCP update has many forms. It could be anything from a surgical few changes to tear it up, throw it out, and write a whole new one. And I know that that's not a full conversation that we've had as this council. about what that might look like. And so it'll be interesting to see what my incoming colleagues have to say on the matter, or what they feel we should be looking at, or if we should be looking at it at all. At the end of the day, we might look at something like a downtown area plan and maybe changing some of the density stuff from units per hectare to FAR, and we might just leave it alone. I don't think that's necessarily enough, but we'll see how that goes. One thing that I do know that we do have to make sure we navigate over the next couple of years at least, the current premier-elect, if you will, has spoken in public about the province removing or challenging municipal zoning autonomy. And I think that's going to be a really interesting conversation and challenge to see play out. And I think, does that mean that the municipalities only have to worry about OCPs and the province handles everything else? We don't know yet. But, yeah, thank you.
Mayor Segers.
All right, I'll weigh into this one. I think the conversation that the community is going to need to look at is, what type of community do we want? Do we want a community that supports cars and travel that way, or are we looking at a walkable community? Is active transportation something that's important? If it is, then we may need to look at community hubs. So a hub in each one of the communities so they can walk to get your quart of milk or loaf of bread or whatever. We don't have that right now. And given how the development's been happening, it's something that we need to look at fairly soon, because otherwise the land and the locations won't be there. Yes, the official community plan needs some work, but I don't think we can wait for that. In order to, we need to do the downtown area plan first. The properties have changed hands. We know that developers are going to come forward within the next year or so to put new projects in place. If we don't have the area plan in place, laying out what the sidewalks are going to look like, what kind of lighting are we going to have? How is the building? Is it going to be 2-story and then set back? What does it look like? If we don't have that soon, it'll be too late. So depending on the time frame for the official community plan, I think the downtown area plan probably needs to happen first. Yeah, that's it.
Councillor McLean.
Yeah, I think I agree, Mayor Segers. I want to touch on something that Councillor Scott said at the beginning, in that the consultation within a big policy change is one of the biggest challenges. With the zoning bylaw, there was a lot of little things that impacted the bigger thing. Everyone, or a lot of people, had their very specific issues that could have derailed the entire process. And I think the smaller scope that works for big policy changes like this, the easier it is to have a conversation. Those little things can be weeded out, and you can focus on the core policy change that you want to do. So looking at something like a downtown area plan, the downtown is the most important area. There are a lot of really important areas or other areas to talk about, but downtown needs to be the most important focus on, like the Mayor Segers said. So that allows us to weed out some of those potential stairs out there when we start to work in the other areas. So it's setting priorities and setting the work plan for what you can deal with. The other challenge I had with the zoning bylaw, I'm amazed we got it done. It was so much work, and it really encompassed a lot of what we were doing in terms of policy change. And that held back some of the smaller policy changes that we could have done. There's a lot of little things we could have dealt with that could have been beneficial, but we wanted to tackle the one big thing. We tackled it, but what about the little stuff? I think that should be a consideration when thinking about tackling a very large project such as a full LCP rewrite.
Councillor Toth.
Thank you. Councillor McLean, I'm going to pick on you for a moment here, because right at the beginning, just before the election last time around, and just as we were sort of coming in, I remember the Director of Planning at the time was really gung-ho to consult on a new sign bylaw. And given that we both came out of the SDBA, we were part of that conversation before the election and a little bit post-election. And yeah, you know, the sign bylaw, tree cutting bylaw, we've had a few little pieces of policy along the way that we've just had to say, you know what, it's not the time right now, you know, focus on everything else.
Just a bit of housekeeping. A while back, we had asked for a copy of the PLR on Havies, and we never did see anything on that. I see there's more amendments coming.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair. We actually just released that to the Davis Bay Community Association yesterday morning, so we can certainly, it was just an oversight, we can certainly forward that to you, to Council. The delay was actually because we vetted it as we would through the Freedom of Information and Protection of Privacy Act. Although we did not get a request through that act, we used that as the guideline, and so we did refer it to the owner applicant for their review and their permission to release it. And just for a variety of reasons, we just finally connected and confirmed that. So it went to them, and we will send to you.
Yeah, that'd be great, please. Thank you. Any more stuff on planning, or move over to engineering? Mr. Dillon, you want to speak to it, or just take questions, or?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I'll say a few words. I think all the staff in the Engineering and Operations Division really appreciate the level of support and engagement we've had from this council. We've shifted during the time that I've been to more of an asset management type thinking with our projects. There's been an acknowledgement of the idea that we really need to think of projects along a 2-year planning cycle, given the things that we have to do. All the projects that we've been able to get done, it's been great for getting grants, you know, having trail done, wharf, op center underway. So I think we're once again proud to add another 21 pages to the quarterly report for sure. And with that, I'll open it up to any specific questions, but it's been really good working with council and the team over the last term.
Mayor Sears.
I'm going to mention a couple of staff members that we brought in. One was the asset management, I don't know the total title, but around asset management. So focus on asset management to get that information gathered in a place that we can utilize it for our planning going forward. That was a huge step that we took as a council. And then the other one was we were very successful with receiving grants. And the managing those was off the corner of people's desks. So we hired a project manager, and we immediately saw an uptick in projects moving forward, more professionalism inside of that, more accountability inside of that, and it allowed the current staff to continue to do their regular jobs rather than also dealing with these off the side of their desk. So those two positions that we brought in made a huge difference in moving these projects forward in the community.
Yeah, I was going to mention that, but we've added the asset management position, project manager, manager of development, engineering, and sustainability, a manager of wastewater. All these things have contributed. And I wanted to say, but it was actually Director Douglas's report on procurement that as a stat, in 2020, we had 8 procurement files. This year, we're going to be over 50. So that just goes to show the amount of procurements and work that's happening out there in the organization.
Councillor Todd.
Thank you. I'll go comments first and then my question. I really appreciate the photos that show up both through the quarterly report as a whole, but also specifically around the parks and the engineering and what's going on. to look at the photos on page 43, you can really see the impact of the drought and the watering issues on our parks. And I'm sure we've got these same 4 photos from every one of our parks facilities this year. It's been a rough ride for sure. Our park staff do an amazing job keeping things running, and so thank you to them. With the Rockwood Lodge, Mission House, these really are gems in our community, and so seeing photos of the substantial upgrades that we've made to these facilities within the last year makes a huge difference to their appeal, their rentability. Ultimately, they're a revenue source, but they are a major asset for our community. In terms of questions, the only one that I've got right now with the groundwater well that we have at the WRC, I know that there's a meter on it for the public. At the public tap, there's a meter on that. Do we know how much water has been used by the public this season?
We have not compiled that information. We'll make sure we include it in the next quarterly report with the next council. I think it was heavily used, more so than any other previous year. That's the anecdotal information I've gotten. And one of the things, I don't know if it's mentioned in the report, is that the WRC was actually able to almost get to 0 SCRD drinking water use by leveraging that well. And they're tweaking the system to even get more out of that well. So I think that's a positive development, and one that the community should know about.
Thank you for that. Actually, using less potable water in the WRC is great news, because it not only is, leaving more water for drinking and the things we need indoors, but it actually saves us money because we are paying metered rates at that facility for water. So with the WRC, there was 1,900 cubic meters of daily flow there that was listed in the report. Do we have minimum flows in that facility that we need to be aware of or cognizant of? I know last year it was a conversation up at the regional district with regards to the Chapman water treatment plant, was that there really are minimum flows that have to be met. So do we have anything like that at the WRC?
In terms of a minimum flow that's required to go through the plant, I'm not aware of a minimum number. I know we did hit a minimum dry flow during the drought of about 900 cubic meters per day. I think it was actually cited by a few of the candidates during the last election cycle as the difference between what the low point and the high point is of what we take through. I'm not aware of a minimum, but there should be one, I would think, for maintenance purposes.
Mayor Segers?
So that begs the question, where are we at with regards to camera work in our pipes?
We put out the RFP, it closed, so we're going ahead with the camera work. We also have another RFP that's actually out right now for a sanitary sewer model and master plan. One of the big challenges we've been having is when we have a new development that comes online, we're really kind of doing educated guesses on how it's going to affect our capacity. And so with this new tool, any new development, we should be able to pinpoint what the downstream implications of hooking up those new developments are, whether we need to upsize a pipe or not, what impacts it's going to have. We've been very successful with flow meters. We've commissioned, the two that at the SIGD inlets, they're up and running, collecting data. We also have 2 additional portable ones that can be deployed as needed. And we put in order for 3 more to do that work ahead of the modeling exercise. So we're doing the camera inspection, but we've gotten a lot of the other pieces around understanding our sanitary collection system. Those have all fallen into place, and they're moving ahead.
Councilor McLean, you.
I have another big question for council. I want to channel my inner Noel Mueller. and bring up the infrastructure deficit that the District of Sechelt has. We haven't talked about that a whole lot, but it is a key decision that we have continued on with, in that we have a 3% tax increase every year, minimum, to deal with the infrastructure deficit and funding our capital program. I just want to see if anyone would like to speak to the importance of continuing to do that, and hopefully continuing it on beyond 2 terms that it's been a focus. Oh, Director Douglas.
Microphone is up.
Thank you. If I could speak for a moment about that. Ultra important. The 3% that we've been accumulating right now is annually about $1.35 million. So we're currently depreciating probably close to $3 million a year, and I know that was the goal, was to fund our depreciation. So yeah, hugely important going forward. It's made a big difference in applying for grants, so we have our side of the money. Very important with regards to some of our projects that are, some of our assets that have expired and we need to get them done. So yeah, obviously from a finance perspective, huge, 100%.
Mayor Segers.
So I'll just say how that ties into the asset management. So currently, what we're estimating we need is based on basically book figures. So we purchased an asset of some sort, a building, sewer pipes, whatever, and then each year we write off, we expense a certain portion of that. So that's what we're currently being used to determine what we should be spending money on, and that shows up in a budget. But that's not accurate. It's not accurate. We don't know. I mean, we found out when we did Trail Avenue that some of the maintenance holes were crumbling. We didn't expect that when we went to replace Trail Avenue and do the work on there. So I think those were like $75,000 a piece, something like that, for the 3 on Trail, and then there were a couple on Medusa. So that's where having the money accumulated, when we get these surprises, we actually can go ahead and get the work done. But the asset management will actually give us the state, right, and the status of all of the equipment and all of the infrastructure. So right now we have a number, but that number is not accurate. We know that, right? So are we actually putting enough aside each year? Probably not. Do we know what that number should be? No, we don't. That's why that work is critical to get done, to ensure that we can actually plan out. We'll know in 4 years we're going to need to replace these sewer lines because they're failing, or this road's going to have to be done. And then we can, inside of that, we can do the budgeting, we can do the planning, we can do the grant applications. So it brings it all together. It's the start.
Yeah, I think what you're referring to is it's called in other places a sustainable infrastructure investment plan, sustainable infrastructure renewal plan, whatever you want to call it. I think, and there's a lot of examples of that work that's being done where it's purely based on condition assessments. I guess the big challenges are a lot of our condition assessments are really old, or we just don't have them. So we got to do a lot of work, and that's part of what I've been trying to address while I'm here, is just to get that assessment work done. And the first step is actually just to know what you own. And so we've been collecting a lot of information on what it is we actually own that's out there, what are our assets. So Parks has been heavily involved in cataloging what it is we own, what condition it's in. So there's a lot of work ahead. But fortunately, we have some more staff resources, so we can start moving some of the stuff forward.
Councillor Toth.
Thank you. Yeah, it'll be interesting as we know more about the costs, whether that 3% is appropriate, whether it should be 4 or 5, or, I know, when we looked at things like maintenance holes that came up, or literally anything, insert infrastructure line item here, a pipe might have been $5,000 to put in the ground when it was first put in the ground, but if we have to replace it suddenly in 2022, it's a $200,000 project, 8 months of lead time because of archaeology and design and permitting. And, you know, heaven help us if it comes near the ocean. It's certainly not, you know, it's not as easy as it was, you know, in the days before I was born. I will say that because I'm young enough to say that. And even 25 years ago, I imagine just in speaking with people, it was just a lot easier to do these sort of things. And it's not that way anymore. It's not easy, it's not cheap, and minimum, hardly any of that, you know, the municipality has any control over. Yeah, so it'll be interesting navigating those going forward. And again, whether 3% is even appropriate anymore.
Mayor Segers.
All right, one other conversation that I don't think has come up for the new council, but it's around our sports fields. So there has been conversation started up and down the coast to have all of the governments, including the school district, look at collaborating on condition of fields. So we don't need all the fields to be, you know, for rep teams, for example. They can be, some of them can be at a lower level for those who are just starting out in different sports. But that ties into, you know, all of the governments working together, but also then supply of water. So how are we going to maintain those fields that we do want to have at those higher levels? Given the water shortages we've had, our staff do an amazing job in trying to bring those fields back, only to have us stop watering them and having them degrade. So that's a bigger conversation besides even just identifying which fields are going to be maintained at what levels, but then how are we going to maintain them? How are we going to provide the water that's needed to continue to support the investment that we're making as a municipality or as a government up and down the coast? So that's a much bigger conversation that I think needs to happen as well.
Director
Yeah, I was just going to say through the chair, some of those conversations have started. I did have a meeting with my counterpart at the SCRD, I believe Shelley. Yeah, and I brought in our parks manager, Jamie, and Jamie's counterpart, and I believe SCRD is going to undertake some kind of a high-level look at all the assets on the coast and how best to go about working together. But at a staff level, there have been some engagement happening and conversations.
Perfect. I think it brings it to an end, unless anybody else has anything else. Nope. Councilor McLean.
I'm going to go a little off agenda, if that's all right. I think now would be a very appropriate time to thank Mayor Segers. Darnelda, I just want to thank you for all the work that you put in this term and in the last 7 years before that. I think you were exactly what Sechelt needed in the time. You brought together a very excellent staff team. You supported them, and you supported council. And both this council and the SCRD board, and right across the political spectrum, you had a collaborative attitude. And Team Sunshine Coast was possible because of your approach and working together. I don't think anyone else could have done that, and bringing people together, both in the staff side and the political side, and most importantly to me, the community side. You worked with the community constantly, and looking at COVID times, you were critical to our community's response. So I can't thank you enough for your service, and thank you for what you've done for Sechelt.
Thank you. Thanks, Matt. That was great. All righty. Well, I guess motion to adjourn? Moved, seconded. All in